Your money, your taxes, your truck, and your road to success in the trucking industry. This is Trucking Business and Beyond, the show that puts the money where it belongs, back in your pocket.
Good morning, you beautiful bunch of fuckers, and welcome to my world. I'm your host, Kevin Rutherford. It is Tuesday, June 25th. It's time for the Power Hour. I believe we'll have the team here from Pittsburgh Power. I haven't seen anybody yet. We'll be taking your calls and answering your questions about everything maintenance. Phone lines are open. I would jump in quick. It usually gets pretty busy. 855-950-3835 if you need to call. If you're listening on the app, hit that call now button and jump in here. Let me check my messages today. I don't see any messages. All right. I'll check in a second, see why the team is late this morning. Normally on Tuesdays, I don't have a whole lot to talk about other than maybe some maintenance items once we get the team in here. So I see something's going on over there. We should have...
Hold on a sec. Hey.
Bruce? Is that you?
Hey, I'll talk to you later, John. Bye-bye. Kevin?
Good morning.
You there?
I am. Good morning, Bruce.
Good morning. I need to get on I'm at the office, so I need to get on the headset. Can I call back in on this line?
I have no idea because I don't know how they called you.
They didn't.
Oh,
they called me from... Hold on a sec.
Let me do this, Bruce. I'm going to put you back in the queue, and you can figure out with Angie how to call back in. Oh, yeah, okay. Angie, Bruce needs to call back in, try to figure that out. Looks like we have, maybe this is the dynamic duo. Good morning, guys. Hello?
Hello?
Anybody with us? Sounds like Leroy.
Hello. Yeah, we kind of hear you. I think our internet on our side's kind of bad because you're breaking up a lot.
Yeah, sometimes that's my connection. Sounds like we're off to a rough start this morning. I'm not exactly sure what happened here this morning. Let me try to figure out. Yeah, it looks like maybe Angie's not hearing me well either. I'm going to restart. That usually starts things working a little better. Looks like we're getting Bruce back too. So let me just restart. Hold on a second.
Ready to connect. Click connect to show now. You are connected as the host. Welcome, host. You are now in the host room and can manage your callers from the Call-in Studio web interface. Audio recording is on.
All right, Leroy, is that any better?
That is fantastic.
All right, good. We got Bruce back too, so let's bring Bruce in here. All right, Bruce, you all set now?
I am set.
All right. I think we're good then. It was a little bit of a bumpy start, but I think we're good now. Bruce, we'll let you go first. What's on your mind today?
Oh, I'm trying to send Angie a message here right now to call John Chamberlain, retired state trooper, turned owner-operator about 14 years ago. Bought a 2000 International 9400 with a D-Deck for Detroit.
Okay.
And just give me 1 second. He finally brought her in, and we did a lot of work. It had rear structure leaks and all kind of things. So we tuned it, and I got a whole list of here things that I could run. But he's now went from 30 to 41 pound of boost, so he's roughly at 666 horsepower. Just absolutely loves the way it runs. So I called him yesterday. And this goes with carrying a spare hose to go from the turbo to the charge air cooler back to the intake. You should carry a spare hose and 2 clamps. So as I'm talking to him and we're laughing and carrying on, he's telling me how great this truck runs. All of a sudden, poof, he blew a hose. so as I'm talking to him, so all the gauges are showing okay. I said, roll under the throttle. Tell me how many pound of boost it'll make.
Right.
Only 10.
Oh, yeah.
So then we knew what it was, right?
Yep.
So he pulled over, tilted the hood, and I said, it'll either be a blue hose or an orange hose coming from the turbo to the charge air cooler, and there it was.
Yep.
It split the hose. Now these could be the original hoses. They could be 24 years old. And they were used to 30 pound of boost. All of a sudden, now they have to deal with 41.
Right.
And he had been running cruise control, so he really didn't need to use 41 pound of boost, but that's what cruise control will do. And so he says, I think I have a spare hose. And he did.
Oh, nice.
But it had a split in it.
Oh.
It had a split in it, but it was only a couple inches in from where the hose clamp went.
Oh, okay.
And he was able to stretch it. He was able to stretch it and get it over. So now the clamp's over there, and he hasn't had a chance. But it took him. He said it was going to take him 10 minutes. Let's say it took him a half hour. But think the fact that he had the old hose.
Oh, yeah.
That saved him from being towed.
Yeah.
Saved him from missing a day's work and several hours at a truck dealership. That fact that he was able to do that, and he had a 7/16 steep well 3/8 drive socket with a ratchet, saved him about $2,400.
Yeah. Yeah. That's something else. Now that you've mentioned
it's worth it.
Because I've done this on the road too. If you have the knowledge and the ability to change parts, then you can't necessarily carry all the parts. We used to carry alternators because they went out pretty regular. You tried to carry as many parts as you could. The nice thing about the modern world today is if I'm broke down on the side of the road, I'm more likely calling Uber than a tow truck. I can go get parts and tools. It's not that hard anymore. It used to be kind of hard. You're stuck out there. How do you get to where you need to go? Now it's easy. So even if I don't have the part, many times I'll just grab an Uber and go get the part.
That's exactly right. But you have to have some tools.
Yeah. Yeah.
And a little bit of mechanical knowledge and be willing to try.
Yep.
So let's see if Angie gets him on the phone and he can talk about his truck.
Yeah, we've got him. Got him in here. So let's go ahead and bring him in right now. We do. John, welcome.
Hey, Bruce. It's an honor to speak to you again.
Okay.
I heard your comments.
Okay. So you're from Georgia. Were you a Georgia state trooper or were you a local policeman?
No, I was born in Chicago. My dad was a police officer. My grandfather was a police officer. So from Chicago, all my relatives were either police or firemen. So I had no choice. So I was with Chicago PD for 10 years and decided to move to Georgia in 1990. And I joined a smaller department outside of Atlanta called Woodstock. And I was with them for 9 years, and I retired and so forth.
So let me ask you a personal question. Mm-hmm. When you pulled over an owner-operator in his semi-truck, were you easy on him?
Well, it just depends on what's going on. I mean, I don't try to be favorites, but everybody has their own preference of people, and this discretion is very important. But I always try to treat people fair, and it depends on the violation, of course. And of course, if he's retired service member. I use my discretion if they're a nurse or a doctor. That's on a regular traffic stop. But most of your typical truck drivers are run-of-the-mill people, everyday people. You've got some military guys out here. But basically, when most of my patrol duties were accidents involving four-wheel vehicles. Every now and then I'd get a bad accident that involves a truck and a car.
All right. So do you want to tell us about 14 years? Did you have this truck 14 years, this 2000 International?
Yes. Yeah. I brought it from a friend of mine. It had 1 million miles on it. And I just started the trucking business. And I drove for a guy for a year. And I said, I got to get my own truck. So the guy I was working for, Mike, his name is Mike Chickless. I says, Mike, sell me the truck. He and hauling. I said, come on, Mike, you got to sell me the truck. So he did. After a year, and he sold the truck for me for $9,000. It had 1 million miles on it. I was just happy just to own a truck because I knew the money he was making, and he was paying me. And I says, you're not going to make any money driving for anybody. So I brought the truck and 1 million miles, and shortly thereafter, I'm burning oil. It was a gallon every 5,000 miles, then it was a gallon every 2,000 miles. And listening to these talk shows, I listened very carefully. And at that time, Kevin was on, and he says, well, when you're burning that much oil, you need to get a end frame. I didn't know what an end frame was. So at 1 million miles, I had an end frame done, and everything was fine for 600,000 miles. Then the same thing happened again, so I had to get another end frame at 1.6, and that's where I'm at now. So I'm almost at 2 million miles now. But the 60 series has been very good to me.
Okay. Well, we did a charge air cooler. We did a front crank seal. We did the torsional damper. For a reason we couldn't put the balancer on. There was an No, we put the balancer on. That balancer's on there.
Yeah.
Okay, and we did a lot of other little things in the rear structure. Seal. Yep. And you did extra things I didn't even expect because I was looking at the truck and I said, well, I had an exhaust leak you fixed. I looked around. I said, I needed a new wiper arm. And you even changed that out. So you went over that down pipe and the Glosplex pipe.
Yeah. Because I run up north a lot, and the rust is a problem. But
we rebuilt the top plate of the transmission, replaced the air module on the top of the trans.
Yeah.
And tell us, is the truck smoother now?
Oh my goodness! I tried to call the first day, and I just wanted to know how quiet it was and the power. I didn't know you increased the horsepower. I just wanted to tune.
Did you not ask for a tune?
Yes, I did, but I didn't. I just wanted it to get better gas mileage because fuel mileage. Yeah, I wanted to, this 5.5 just doesn't get it for me. And I used to get 7, but I hit a tire. A guy was passing me, and a tire blew, and a piece of rubber. If you could imagine the timing of this, a piece of rubber went underneath my car, slapped the crap out of my computer, and wiped it out. So I had to get another computer, and I had it tuned twice, and both people that tuned it never could quite get it right because it never rode right. My fuel mileage sucked, and that's one of the things that I was hoping that you would do, more importantly than the seals, because it was leaking oil from the front and the back.
Yeah. Okay. We set the overhead and horsepower now. So when you come to a shop like ours and you ask for a tune, that's what you're going to get. You're going to get a performance tune. So
right. Well, Nick, what's that? Brian, Eric wanted me to get the dyno and all the other stuff, and I was like, well, I don't really want that. Just tune it up. He says, well, then we can tell you how much the difference is, the performance and all that. And I was like, well, just tune it. I'll be fine. But when I first got in the truck and drove it off, I could feel the difference immediately. And I didn't know. I thought it was good. I know I had 475 horses. I thought you were going to race it to 500, but it turns out you raced it to 6-something. And my question, it was so funny because the other day when we were talking, Bruce, I said, well, won't I burn more fuel with all these extra horses? And you told me, you gave me an example of me and you going up a hill with a wheelbarrow.
Mm-hmm.
So I've noticed my fuel consumption is a lot better, and I just give just a little bit of gas. And I haven't had any real steep mountains yet. I'm in Kentucky now on I-71 going south, but I haven't had any real mountains yet.
You don't need mountains. All you need is long grades. All it takes is long grades, and put your foot in the throttle, and you'll see you're pushing less on the pedal. And are you pre-accelerating like we talked about for the roller coaster?
Oh yeah. I've been doing that, but I can tell the difference. I don't have to give it much. I don't have to give it much, and the boost, like I said, my boost never went past 27. So it goes up to 41 now, and what a difference! What a difference! Yeah. It was so amazing, Bruce. We were talking, and as I'm talking to you, I was talking about the boost and how happy I was with the work you guys did. I'm talking to you, and I hear this pop, and I said, whoa. I said, man, I didn't like that noise. I said, I heard a pop, and I hear air, and I said, oh my God, what the heck can that possibly be? And I couldn't believe it. I said, oh my goodness. And then I looked at all the gauges. I said, well, I got oil pressure, I got this, I got that. I said, oh man, my turbo's not working. So you told me to pull over, and that's exactly what I did. And you said it's probably one of the hoses. And this poor hose has been used to 29 pounds for 14 years. This poor bastard gets 40 pounds of pressure. And, hey, something's got to give. And that poor thing just broke open. And I'm on the phone with you. I said, Bruce, what are the odds of me talking to you about how well this thing runs and how proud I am, blah, 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 and something like that happens? I said, what are the odds on that?
Yeah. You said something about the trucking gods.
Oh, yeah. I said, yeah, they frowned upon me yet once again. And it was amazing, Bruce. And then I said, I think I got this part because I every time I change something, I'll keep the old part just in case, and I have all, just like we discussed, I always have extra hoses, clamps. I got every single hose I can replace if I have to,
So you said this hose is 8 or 10 inches long. Usually they're about 5 or 6, so this is a little different hose and probably one that we wouldn't have in stock. So you really need to stop by an international dealership and get a replacement. Okay.
Yeah.
Do not keep putting it off. All right.
Yes. Yeah, I certainly will.
Okay.
I will.
All right. Well,
Bruce.
Hey.
Can I say one more thing?
Sure.
When I called you initially, if you remember our very first phone call, I called you about I was about to buy another truck.
Yeah. I do remember that.
Remember that? And I said, if anybody, I had a question about this International 826 engine, and I didn't like what I was hearing. I said, if anybody would know about this motor, it would be you. And that was our first conversation. That's the first time we ever spoke. And you squared everything out and told me to keep this 60 series. And that's where we're at. That's where we're at. And I expect your honesty and I expect your advice. So we've been good ever since, Bruce.
All right. All right, John. Thanks for calling in.
Thanks for
You're
the call.
welcome. Have a good. Okay,
All right. Take
All right.
care.
Bye-bye.
All right.
Ken and I have one more thing.
Sure.
I have one more thing. Back to gearing. Older gentleman called me one day. Older, he's probably around my age, but he's still hauling cattle, and he has a new Kenworth, and they're in Michigan, father and son team, and son had just bought an International, I think it's an '06, with an ISX, and had 358 gears, and we're talking about gearing, and he talked to all his buddies and said he's going to put 264s in. Oh, you're going to lose power, you're going to lose response, you're going to lose everything. Well, he listened to us, put the 264s in, and absolutely loves them. He went on fuel mileage, hauling cattle in Michigan. He was at 5 no, let me find his message here. 6.5, and he's at 7.2. 0.7 of a mile to the gallon from going from 358s to 264s.
Wow. Nice.
And usually I tell people a half a mile, but he went up 0.7.
Nice.
And this was several weeks ago. This wasn't just one tank full. Yeah.
All right.
No, I'm sorry. He was at 5.5. He's now at 6.2. And this is the first thing we've done. We've got a lot of work to do with this truck. So anyway,
All right.
that's what I have.
All right. Let's hear from Eric and Leroy. You guys there? We know Leroy's there. I heard him once this morning.
Howdy.
So let's go.
We're here.
All right. Leroy, you're up next. What's on your mind this week?
I did want to talk about, I guess, a little bit of a short wiring piece. I had a question the other day about somebody wanted to hook up a lift gate to the back of their trailer, and they were wondering what size wire that they needed. And this is kind of a common question I get a lot for anytime that you're wiring anything up. The question commonly is, well, what size wire do I need? And I think we've talked about this before, where generally the bigger the better. But also it comes down to size constraints and whatnot. But if you wanted to be pretty specific about it, there's a chart online that you can look up. It's under the AWG chart, which is American Wire Gauge chart. And you're going to see wiring from 000s all the way to probably 27, 28. And the way that it works is the higher the number on the AWG chart, the smaller the wire is. And I think that comes from when they make wire, it is how many dies that they need to cut the wire down. So they'll start with a giant cable, and then the more dies you add, if you add one die, it cuts it down more. If you add 5 dies, it cuts it down even more, and then 27
So
cuts it down even more.
I'm going to make a comment here, because when we set scales of something, how we're going to measure things, it's totally random. I mean, it's always made up. So if we're going to make up something, why don't we make up something that's logical? So many times I see this. I guess in gear ratios, I understand it, but we always have to explain the lower the number, the higher the gear ratio. And that's always confusing. Here's another one with wire. With wire, there was no reason to do it this way. There had to be a better way that was logical in your mind, so you're not always having to think the other way. It's kind of like the whole metric thing. I wish we would have switched. It's way better. It's much easier. But this one makes me crazy. We set scales that don't make any logical sense. Why is the wire smaller because the number's bigger? Just make it the other way.
Well, I think even to trip you up more, I think you're in Europe, it's different. I think there's a British scale for wire as well.
See, that's what I mean. Theirs probably makes sense because they use the metric system, and it makes sense. I don't know why we do this so often.
I don't know.
Yeah. All right. Go ahead.
But yeah, I think the American one the American one comes from the number of dies that they make, which I guess can make sense. But if you didn't know that and you're just looking to pick out a size wire, and you're like, well, I'm going to get a big cable, so I'm going to get 28 gauge wire.
Right.
You're going to get a surprise when it's
tiny. So let's
angel
think
hair.
about that. They set up a system that works for the people who don't need to know. The people who make the wire work with wire every day. They know what size is what size, but the system is easier for them. I don't work with wire every day. I need a logical, easy system to follow, but they didn't do that.
Yeah, I'm trying to look up real quick about the one's called British Standard Wire, but it looks to be about the same, but it's hard to look that up right now. But anyways, so yeah, generally the smaller the wire gauge number, the more current that you can handle, and that's generally the wire that you want to be on the safe side. If you're running a circuit, oh, go ahead.
Now, I was just thinking something, but I don't think I had it right, so never mind. Go ahead.
So the way that I usually look at this is if you have, let's say you're powering an electric motor or some device that's taking 10 amps. So you want your wire to at least be able to handle 10 amps. So if you look at this chart and you see the maximum current rating for, like, let's say a 20 gauge wire is 2 amps, you're not going to want to use that to power your electric motor or whatever you're trying to power. So generally, I try to stay with something, again, smaller that's above the amount that I need, because you want your fuse to pop. You don't want your wire to burn. Because that's what's going to happen if you have a 30 amp fuse on a piece of wire that can only handle 5 amps. The fuse isn't going to pop. Your wire is going to light on fire and burn your truck down.
Yeah, that's bad.
So, yeah, you typically don't want that. The other thing that comes into consideration is length. So, for instance, I looked up something this morning about running 2 gauge wire for this guy's lift gate. It is a small change from, like, let's say a foot to 40 feet, which is the kind of the length of the trailer. So in 40 feet, the voltage drop from 12 volts would be 1.25 volts. So even though the resistance per 1,000 feet is only like 1/10 of an ohm, that adds up over 40 feet to calculate out to a voltage drop of a volt, maybe 1.25 volts. So if you had 12 volts at your battery, you're only going to get 10.75 at your motor. And depending on what device it is back there, it may or may not like running 10 volts. So yeah, you kind of want to keep in mind of the length of the wire. There's simple calculators online that can figure out what sort of wire gauges you need, but generally it's not a problem on a truck unless you're running the length of a trailer. Then you need to do some calculations, but otherwise, yeah, the bigger the wire, the better. And I was going to say, what else?
Well, I've got something while you're thinking about it, because you just gave me another idea. You know, one of the regular pieces of advice I have to give is when somebody has that truck that we're just not going to be able to fix it. You know, we talk about leaving it in the hood with the keys in it and the running, and, you know, we have a couple solutions there, but we could just do some creative wiring too. It's a little more stealthy.
Creative wiring, it's more stealthy.
Yeah, if we need to disappear a truck.
Wink, wink. No,
okay. I was off thinking about what I was going to say next. I was
your eyes open now. I'm amazed.
Yeah. But yeah, the last thing I wanted to touch on was the size of the wire. The larger the wire is, the less resistance it has over a certain amount of feet. So if you look at the chart, like 0 gauge wire has like 1/10 of an ohms of resistance over 1,000 feet, and something like 18 gauge wire has like 4 or 5 ohms. So that adds up pretty quick. If you have 4 or 5 ohms over 50 feet, you might experience a voltage drop of 3 or 4 or 5 volts, which can either make a light, especially LEDs, they need to be at a certain voltage or they won't work. In order for the voltage to go through the diode to actually make the light, it has to have a certain voltage drop. It's not like a regular incandescent bulb where it'll just be dim, it just won't work. So if you were like, well, this thing I need only requires 1/10 of an amp because it's an LED, but then you use 80 feet of wire to get snakes through the cab and all the way back to the back, you may have a big enough voltage drop by the time you get there that your light won't work. So again, it's very, very simple calculations that you can do online, and there's already calculators out there that can do that. But
good. All right.
I just want to touch on that.
Excellent. Anything else?
Not for me. I think Eric has something now.
All right.
Yeah,
Eric,
actually,
what
I
you
was
got
taking
today?
Memory lane. Yeah, I was taking a trip down memory lane when he was talking about electrical, because before I started here, I was actually starting the apprentice program for an electrician, union electrician, and I still have it's called Ugly's book. It's a little pocket book that I still use to this day, that has all kind of neat little formulations and equations to figure out like voltage drop, like what he was just talking about, but even like bending conduit and stuff. It's a really neat little book. If anybody gets intrigued by that kind of stuff, I highly recommend it. A couple things I want to talk on today. First of all is, what we have going on in the shop. We have a couple trucks in here. We were talking about a little bit of corrosion and rust earlier. John was talking about driving up in the salt belt. We have a radiator here now in a 97 Kenworth W900. Longtime customer, name's Maddox, if he's listening. He had a working show truck before, and he got rid of that one. He's starting all over again, and he's going to start out with a W900 platform with an N14 in it. And we're going to do a crankshaft dampener, radiator, charge air cooler. We did a Hawkeye report, found some stuff, which I'll highlight here in a minute. But the radiator, we actually put a post on our Facebook page so people can actually see this. I've never seen one literally disintegrate. If you literally blow air across it, it crumbles. There's nothing left of it at all.
That surprises me because we've had a few like that.
Yeah, we have another one now.
And this is the fins. This is the fins between the tubes, and the fins carry the heat away from the tubes. And I did have Jordan post that about 10 minutes to 11. That should be on Kevin's site.
There should be full color photos. You can see this.
Post the black and white. Yeah. Do we post black and white photos?
No. Print.
Full color photos.
So on this
in
one,
Smell-O-Vision.
Are they 4K?
Radiator. 5.
All right, there we go.
Eric's like, the color? They're 4K color?
On a stock radiator for, let's say, like a W900 or a Peterbilt 379, your standard tubes and fins and everything, the dimensions on a radiator is going to be usually a 3-row. Some of them have a 4, but not usually. They're a straight tube design. They have 14 fins per square inch, and the tubes are usually ½ inch. On our high performance rads, we're going to get 16 fins per square inch, dimpled tubes, and 5/8 tubes. And the rows on a factory, I've seen anywhere, I think as low as like 250, 270, up to 320. On ours, it's going to have 400. So the sizing, the spacing, and the numbers of the tubes is just larger. Then the dimpling process slows the coolant down to get the heat to absorb into the tubes a little bit longer. And because ours have 16 fins per square inch, where a stock one has 14, we're able to extract more heat off of those tubes. So they do work a lot better. But if you're running like Northeast in the wintertime, the stuff they put on the roads now is highly, highly corrosive. Take a look at your radiator, your charge air cooler. It's something that people probably don't look at real closely because a shroud covers it on the backside, usually on the bottom where they start to go. And the front's usually covered by either an AC condenser, charge air cooler, or maybe even like a tranny or fluid cooler up there too. So just take a peek in there with a flashlight next time you're around there, because chances are it's probably getting bad. A lot of people overlook that. A couple other things I want to talk about was I had a conversation with my engine builder actually a couple weeks ago about zinc. And a lot of people are under the impression, and as I was too, is there's no such thing as too much zinc. Zinc's always good for, especially on a brand new engine.
That's not true. Yeah, I know where you're going with this.
And I watched a couple very fascinating videos and read some very cool articles on it. If somebody thinks too much zinc is not a bad thing, think of it like this. It's like paint on your house. If you've ever scraped paint like off a window trim or anything, if you have very, very thick paint, it comes off real easy. If you have very thin layers of paint, it creates a nice hard barrier on there that's really hard to get off. And the same theory applies here with zinc. The more you put in there, the more it builds up and fills in all the imperfections in any machine surface. But the problem is, well, let me back that up. It's also polarized. So it is attracted to carbon and steel just by a magnetic pulse. But the bad thing is, if you get too much of it on there and it starts to peel off, which it will, sometimes it can take the metal with it. So watch how much zinc you put in it. Don't add more if it already has a good zinc base in it. On a diesel engine, I think we're regulated to 800 parts per million now on a diesel engine. And the automotive, I think it's like around 1,200 parts per million. So that is one thing I do look at on the oil sample results from OPS, is I want to look at that in conjunction with the detergents, because the detergents are also polarized and they do kind of have a counter effect on each other.
Correct.
And while we're on the oil topic, you and I had a question about the acid numbers. When according to base, when does acid become prevalent? Well, I finally got an answer on this.
Okay.
So the way this works is there's always acid present, but when it overcomes the alkaline properties in oil, the magic number is right around 20 to 25%. So whenever it starts to deplete itself down around the 20, 25%, which on most conventional oils, they're going to be right around 6 to 7 on a base number for a baseline. Once they get down around the 2 to 3, that's when OPS will flag them. So that is why they start to get flagged at the orange and the red color. So we actually don't want to run it down to 0 because it's already overcoming the alkaline properties, and we don't want to get it too far progressed where it does start causing damage.
Got it. That's changed a lot in the new oils. We used to start with more was necessary. They're saying that we just need less and less of that base. Now, we're really seeing that. I mean, we're seeing that they can stay down in those low numbers and never really cause a problem. The zinc thing, there's almost never a case where just because something is good, more is always better. That's almost never the case, and it's certainly the case with this. We talked for years about Rotella being a good oil. And the way this came up is I've had oil companies approach me and want to be sponsors or work with us or be partners. And my answer to them has always been, we'll do it as long as you're okay with me saying on the air, I can't tell you that this oil is any better than any other oil. And they're like, no, we're not okay with that. Our oil's better. And my answer was, well, prove it to me. Come on. I mean, for the most part, oil is oil. We have engines that last 1.5 million miles, and you can't ever make the claim that this oil always makes an engine go longer than this oil. You can't make the claim that this oil will last longer before changing. There are almost no claims you can make about oil that can be proven. So as long as they meet all the API classifications for diesel and for your engine, and it's the right weight we're looking for the most part, oil is oil. We've talked about Rotella, and in the beginning, I said, look, since we can't really tell the difference in oils, you might as well use Rotella. It's everywhere. It's easy to find. It's priced pretty well, and it works really good. And then when John was on the show, Walco, he started telling me they use it in the race world a lot because of the zinc content. But it wasn't too much. It was the right amount. And you can't just start dumping zinc in and think you're going to make a better oil. This is my problem with almost all oil additives. You have to be very careful about oil additives because you don't understand the base chemistry of the oil you're adding it to. And you could create problems by having too much of one additive, and that oil wasn't designed for that. Some additives might want to put zinc in, but you don't want to put that into Rotella. It's already got enough. So I'm a believer in our oils are all as good as we need them to be. I can't figure out how one oil can be better than another, and we might as well not try putting in additives. Every oil engineer I've ever talked to said, no, we don't need additives. We put them in ourselves.
That's exactly right. You need to understand the science behind it before you start adding.
I suck at chemistry, so I don't even get basic chemistry, let alone the chemistry of the oil.
Well, that's why I just kind of listen to them and say, yeah, I'll agree with you. And experience tells me. I've looked at, I don't know how many tens of thousands of oil samples over 30 years. There's virtually no difference in oils. There was never a pattern that jumped out and said, wow, look, this oil performs so much better than that other oil. Just doesn't happen.
Yeah, we're so far away from the Quaker state of the 80s. I mean,
Yep.
it's completely opposite.
Right.
They stepped up their game.
Quaker. Can we call that Quaker sludge?
Yeah.
That's exactly what we called it.
Right. Right.
The putty.
And I tell you, back then, whoops head, I don't think whoops head's around anymore. But when we'd pull valve covers off of Big Cam Cummins, we'd look at each other and say, oh, another whoops head, because they were always black inside.
Yeah. All right. What else we got?
That's all I have for today.
All right. I think it's time to get to some phone calls then. Let's go to North Carolina to get started. Justin.
Kevin, did you look at this?
Go ahead, Bruce.
Hey, good morning, guys. How y'all doing?
Good. And just wondered if Kevin got to see this picture of this radiator that came out of this Kenworth.
Where did you send the picture? Did you send it to me somehow?
Jordan sent it.
Oh, I'll go check my.
I have one in my phone. I'll send right to you, Kevin.
Yeah, because I'm not seeing anything.
Okay.
All right, Justin, go ahead. What's on your mind today?
So I'm in your coaching program. I need a creative way to install some tank heaters on my truck, by the way. But no, I had that transmission job done, or not transmission job, the clutch replaced on my truck the other week or whatever. They finished it up yesterday. And then the dude, I feel like this is very crappy customer service, but he tells me that, he asked me if I have any problems shifting it in, downshifting or getting it going reverse. And I'm like, no, I had no problems before, y'all touched it and, put the clutch in or whatever. He's like, well, we spent, some time, going through the air dryer and checking this and checking that or whatever, and it needs some software program that we don't have access to. So the long or the short of it is, I think he's BSing because I had to have it towed from his shop after spending $7,000 on having the clutch and flywheel and all that, put in, and have to tow it to the Peterbilt dealership to have them, quote unquote, put some software in the transmission. And that just, I don't know, to me that just doesn't make sense, but I don't know, and it's real shoddy business practice. If you can't complete the job, why not be honest with somebody from the beginning? You know what I'm saying? So I don't know.
So was this
an automatic?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Sometimes that can happen. The communications between the engine, the communications between the engine and the transmission sometimes can be problematic. But Leroy, do you want to touch on that?
On the connection of the data link from the engine and the transmission?
I guess.
Well, I think there's been some other phone calls we've received where people had a clutch put in or the transmission was out. I think we recently had one that didn't want to shift into high gear or something.
What changes just because we took things apart and put them back together?
Yeah, I don't understand that.
Could be the connectors. Could be the wiring being moved. Could be the hoses being moved.
Yeah, the only time that you should have to do any programming when you tear it apart and put it back together is if you have replaced something. If you've installed a clutch or something, you typically want to reset the historical values so the clutch can readjust itself for the new one, because it's made adjustments over time to a wearing clutch. So if you put a new one in, you want to change that to for the TCM can properly, engage the clutch and disengage based off of that.
So what I'm hearing really is that this is kind of a known issue. One, if you're pulling this out and putting in the clutch, you should have the ability to go in and reset the computer the way it should be. Or if a problem occurs during this operation, you need to be able to reset it. At the very least, you think your shop would tell you that up front. That, look, if this happens, we have to send it out to have it reprogrammed. because it looks like when you're doing this kind of work, it's real common that you're going to have to. So I think you should at least tell somebody up front, and it should be part of the quote.
Right. I mean, because it wasn't even part of the quote. It was like, they quoted me at 12 hours labor and then what the parts were, and then, they get it all together, and they're like, well, we can't get the shift,
Well, right. That's
and,
part of the
figure it out, and then.
Right. And it's part of the original job, and it sounds like this is common, so you would think you would just at least tell somebody up front, we may have to send this out.
Well, it's not always that easy
No,
when you're dealing with electronics, with mechanical. All it takes is a crack in a hose that feeds air, a bad connection. If it needs a clutch, it means it probably has at least 800,000 miles on it. We've talked over the years that hoses sometimes are only good for 8 years. So,
what was the additional charge at the dealership?
I haven't really. They got it yesterday, and they're supposed to look at it today and let me know something probably about, I don't know, early afternoon, 1 o'clock, something like that.
Leroy, this shouldn't be any major charge, right? I mean, I don't think we're doing anything major. You're just kind of going back in and resetting some software stuff, right?
The last time we did one here, I don't know, how long did it take me? I think it took like 45 seconds or something like that to reset it. So, yeah, that was a pretty hefty charge. I mean, it took more time to walk from my office to the Outback to do it.
Right.
To actually change it. Well, then I had to wait for it to connect and the key to turn on.
Yeah.
That's going to be a big charge there. It took all 2 minutes.
So, I mean, this guy had the diesel laptops and all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, he had some software. I mean, to me, is the software some kind of proprietary Eaton software or something, or some kind of proprietary Packard software? But I'm sure it's not astronomical. I mean, if you bought the Cummins stuff, you could probably afford the, Eaton or whatever.
I think the Eaton one is like $400 or $500 a year, so it's not actually too bad.
Yeah, see, that just don't make no sense.
Well,
all right.
That's just for Eaton. And then you have all the other companies that want $400 or $500 a year, and all the charges continue. So, Kevin, you have notification silence, so I don't know if you received those pictures.
I'll go check. I do that because otherwise there'd be all kinds of beeping and buzzing, and every time I got a message, so I usually shut it down. But I think I got it. It just doesn't notify me. Yeah, I got it.
Okay.
Wow. What a mess. Oh, man. Jeez.
And that truck was not overheating when it came in.
Wow. That's incredible. I mean, I don't know how it was getting...
And it wasn't leaking either.
Any kind of cooling at all.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's bad.
I don't want to step on the other guy's time. Let's go back to his conversation.
Yeah. All
right.
right.
We'll talk about the radiator.
Justin, anything else?
So I'm in this dilemma, like we were talking to you in the coaching program last week or whatever. Like, our goal is to get out from underneath this truck, and I just don't know. I kind of feel like I just need to cut back and trim everywhere like possible, as far as just doing the bare minimum to keep it rolling and just get rid of it. Just like changing the oil filters and the fuel filters and that kind of thing, and just doing whatever to make it compliant until I can get rid of it. Just because it's been such a nightmare, with
that's
all of the maintenance.
I never take that question lightly. Should I get rid of this truck and get another one? I put a lot of time and energy and thought, and I've done it a lot. And this was a case where I just couldn't see any reason to keep this truck anymore.
Right. So, I mean, I'm, pausing my, max mileage flashpoint
Yes.
subscription, because if I'm not going to keep the truck long term, then I don't need to be putting extra money into it like that.
Yeah, the goal should just be to get rid
I
of
guess
this.
right now my plan going forward is probably just run it for a month or two and just, being done with it.
Yeah. Yeah, and we don't care how much we get out of this truck, really. That we just need to get into a new one. So it's really not, it's just about finding the right truck to get, and then you can get rid of this one.
Okay. I got one more question for you.
Sure.
And I don't know if this is a cut and dry answer or not, but if we're going to look for another truck or whatever, and we find something that has, less, about half the miles that we got on our truck now, is really pulling an oil sample, that necessary? Could we get a lot of the information off of the ECM?
There is nothing. There is nothing.
A couple 100,000 miles.
There's unless Leroy can tell me where they might hide this. There is nothing on the ECM that can even begin to tell us the condition of the oil or the physical condition of the engine. There are no sensors. There's no software. There's no readings. Oil tells us a lot. Oil tells us what contaminants might be in there. Is there coolant in there? If there is, remember, my philosophy behind buying a truck is we are working as hard as we can to find a reason not to buy it. We're not trying to find the right truck to buy. We're eliminating every truck we shouldn't buy. So we're always looking for a reason, and it doesn't have to be a big reason. There's a lot of trucks to buy. If I pull an oil sample and there's coolant, I'm moving on. Why would I even be interested in a truck that has a known coolant leak getting into the engine, and there's so many things it could be? I don't want this truck. I'm just going to move on. If there's just really high soot, this thing just isn't tuned well. It's not running right. How long's that been going on? I don't want it. I'm just going to move on. And there's nothing other than an oil sample that can tell us any of this.
Right, but I'm thinking like it has like 200,000 or 300,000 miles on it. It's still a relatively, brand new engine.
I have, this doesn't happen nearly as often as it used to, but let me just give you a personal example. After like 50 years in the industry, my father bought his first brand new truck ever. The Liberty Edition, cab over Kenworth, beautiful truck. First oil change, had to have an in-frame. Brand new truck. The rings would never seat. It would just burn oil constantly. Lots of things can go wrong in 300,000 miles. Lots of things.
Yeah.
I
guess if we're going to do all of that, like, what's the best way of like asking, somebody that runs a dealership, be like, I want access to the truck before, y'all put it on
here's the thing.
Market. How do you do that?
Relationships are always with individuals. So you pick whatever dealer you want to work with, find a good salesperson there, and explain to them what you're doing. And let them go out and find the truck you're looking for. I had a sales guy. He was in Indiana when I first started working with him. I was in Ohio. Then I moved to Florida and moved the whole operation. All I would do back then, believe it or not, I would send him a fax with my wants. Here's the truck I want. Here's the specs I'm looking for. When you find it, if it's been serviced, just cross it off the list. Don't bring it to me if it's been serviced, because I'm not going to look at it. And they would go find a truck and they would set it aside without servicing it. And I would send an oil sample kit down and we'd get an oil sample and you move on from there.
Okay.
Let me tell you.
On a truck sitting on a lot, you're going to take it for a ride for about 10 miles to get it warm and then pull the sample?
No. The oil's been changed. There's no reason to pull a sample on any truck sitting on a lot.
No, if the oil hasn't been changed,
oh, right. Yes.
and the truck's sitting there on a lot, and so you're going to have to take it for a ride. You're going to have to tell the dealer you got to drive this truck for 10 miles to get the temperature up and get all the medical particles floating in the oil, and then pull the sample.
Yeah, that's correct.
And then you're going to have to probably pay either mechanic labor, because I doubt if they're going to let you take some wrenches to something to loosen up a line and fill a little bottle with oil.
Again, it comes down to the relationship.
Things with the tubing.
Yeah, you can do it with the vampire tube. You know, it comes down to the relationship. The dealership that I used and the sales guy that I used, they never charged me for any. Maybe they did in the very beginning. I can't remember. But after a while, they just knew. And I bet I bought 6 or 7 trucks with that guy over the years. And this is how it always worked.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, Justin, I know sometimes this sounds like a lot of work, and it's more time consuming, and you might spend some extra money. But this is how we get a truck that doesn't end up like the one you have.
Okay.
And I know if you tell other people
that, and you can bring it in, let's do the Hawkeye report.
That's even better. That is a step in my buying process. If you don't have somebody like Pittsburgh Power really close, I still have it in there that you go find a good independent mechanic and you let them look the truck over, unless you're capable of that. If you're capable of really crawling around and looking over and finding those things, that's fine too.
Well, I guess I'll let some other people get on here, and I'll call you back at I don't know, later in the week, and we'll talk about some truck specs or whatever.
Sounds good. All right. And you are in the coaching call, so you can send me all the information ahead of time, and then I'll look at it and give you the lowdown. Let's go to Nevada. Scott, welcome to the program.
Hey, guys. I'm looking at a 2001 379 with a Cummins ISM in it, and I was just wondering what your guys' opinion on that was. I can't really find a whole bunch of information on that motor online.
What are you going to do with it?
That was going to be my question.
I'm going to haul a 28-foot just single axle pup trailer.
You're going to haul a pup trailer. What's your gross weight going to be?
Probably like less than 40.
Yeah, I was going to say 30.
Oh, yeah, that's a great combination. If the truck's in good shape and the oil analysis is good and the ECM report's good, I'd buy that in a heartbeat.
What year is it?
Okay. It's 01.
How much?
01 with the ISM, and that engine makes great horsepower. I think they're up to 850 in the marine application, so there's a lot of room for improvement.
Yeah, it's set at 410 right now, but I'd probably want to change that.
Yeah, I would have no problem taking that up to 550.
Okay.
What transmission's in it?
It's got a 10-speed with 373 rear single axle. But,
pretty common setup.
Is it low pro 22.5 tires?
Just regular 22.
Okay, well,
11R.
That's basically equivalent to then the 355 rear. You're going to be okay. What speed do you want to travel?
I don't go more than 58.
Oh, you're fine.
Yeah,
you're in good shape.
If I wanted,
that you're going to say 75 and 80 across Wyoming, then we might want to talk about gearing. But that is a higher RPM engine anyway. So,
what would you usually run that one at?
I would probably want to run that at 1500 and up, maybe say 1400 and up.
14's good.
Okay. And if I wanted to change
on
to an 18
on the level, you could be down at 1300.
Yeah.
Look at the boost gauge. You can always, if the boost is hovering low below 10, you can run it at any speed or any RPM. You're not doing any damage to the engine. Put a pyrometer in, a boost gauge, and if the pyrometer's down and the boost is down, heck, if you're going along the level with that kind of weight, 40,000, you're down at 1,200 RPM, you're okay. But if you see the exhaust temps going up and the boost is going up, but the RPM is low, go by your gauges, and it's telling you that you're too low.
Right.
You're too low of RPM. Okay. The boost and the pyrometer working together will tell you that.
Right. I'm pretty familiar with that. So, but I just
plus just the sound, the sound and the feel of it.
Right. There's just not a lot of information on the ISM available.
Yeah.
All right. That was
Well, like I say, in the marine package, there's a lot of them in the marine package. I've never heard a complaint. I know people that have repowered boats with them and loved them.
All right. Good to hear. Thank you.
All right. Thanks for the call. Let's go to...
Now, that's a rare truck, Kevin.
Yeah, it is.
Kevin, that's a rare truck. A single axle, 379 with a ISM.
That's a rare one. There's no doubt.
Yeah. Did you get a chance to really look at those two radiators compared to each other, Kevin?
I did. What a difference.
Yeah. You can see how far the fin or the tubes are apart in the stock radiator versus our performance radiator.
Yeah, definitely. You can see
how we get
cooling capacity.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the other thing I will say,
the reason we can't,
I'm all for
Go ahead.
the bigger cooling capacity. We know it works much, much better, but you got to keep them clean. And the more fins, the more tubes, the tighter some of those spots. So you have to be even more careful about keeping it clean.
Whenever I was started to design radiators, and I was working with the engineers at Radac, he told me that this is the tightest we can go and still get air through it.
Yeah, they're good.
And we have not ever had a problem on any of these rads collecting dirt, and I'm surprised because and maybe the people are conscientious and do hit them with low pressure, like a quarter car wash or something.
Yeah.
But it has not been a problem.
Good. All right.
Okay.
Tom, go ahead.
Yes. Hey, I was just wondering if you guys have gotten any feedback on this new S13 International yet.
Only Matt's report. Matt's report was all we had.
Yeah, I have not heard anybody that owns one yet. Or maybe I did have one call. I think I was surprised they had one, but they had no real feedback on it yet at all.
Right, I think I heard that one a while back.
Now the architecture is very promising. The architecture is fairly close to what we see in the Volvo and Mack platform. So it should be an engine that we can downspeed.
Right, and I'm looking at the 840 Volvo or the S13 International. I'm just trying to see which one we can build lighter and which one we can, what the prices are going to be.
I'm really optimistic about International being a player again. I haven't looked at International for a long time just because of all their problems. No engine choice that I was really happy about. This could bring International back in as a really good, viable choice. I bought only International trucks for several years when I first got started, and I was always really happy with them.
Yeah, it's sounding promising for sure. I did talk to Bruce here a while back about down gearing my truck a little bit. He wanted me to go with a 228 and replace the whole rear ends, but ended up I couldn't end up doing that because the rear ends were going out, or the front one was. So I ended up going with 264s because that's the highest gear I could put in my pumpkins.
Right.
So,
right. When you want to go higher than 264, a lot of times you have to change the housings. Rob at LKQ in Easton, Maryland, has done a great job of finding cutoffs for us at very reasonable prices. So.
Yeah, he found me one, but then I talked to Bigfoot up in Bristol, and they said that the amount of modification they would have to make and the lag time on getting it done would be a bit much for me, especially since I was needing it done pretty quick.
Do you have the 264s in it now?
I put the 264s in about almost a month ago now, yeah.
Okay, and what engine is
3
it?
weeks ago. It's X15, 525
Okay, what year?
performance, 19.
And are you able to run it in direct gear?
I'm in direct right now, about 57 mile an hour at 1250.
Oh, that's working then.
So
Did
did
it improve the fuel mileage?
It seems to have. Of course, I've been running in the mountains and pulling hills ever since I put them in there, so it's hard to get a good grasp on it. But it looks like I'm about between the 1/2 and 3/4 mile difference.
Well, that's great.
So,
and does it pull harder?
I don't know if I'd say it pulls harder, but it didn't hurt it.
Okay.
I'm
Do
just
you
pulling
have
it
a
little
manual or
bit.
an automatic? Are you a manual or an automatic?
It's a 13 with double over.
Okay. So you're running in 11th gear right now?
11th gear right now at 57, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's
Okay.
it
Well, that's
worked out
good.
really
So
well.
the change worked for you. Is the truck and the engine and the transmission quieter?
Yeah, when I'm running 12.5 or 1250, definitely quieter than running 1475.
So when you were in 13th gear, what rear gears did you have in it?
336s.
336s, okay. So at the same speed in 13th gear, what was your RPM?
1475 was about 70 mile an hour.
Okay. And now you're going 57. If you take it with 264s to 70 mile an hour, are you going into 12th gear?
I can put it in 12th. It runs about 13, a little over 13 at 72.
Okay.
And if I drop it into 13th, I can get it about 72 mile an hour with it about 1200 RPM.
When you're in the mountains and you're coming down long grades, you ever just put it in 13th gear and let the RPM come down to 1,000 or so and just let it run?
No, because it'll get away from me on the speed.
I'm not talking about coming down like Bell Pass or out of the Eisenhower Tunnel. I'm talking about long grades, like coming down off a plateau on I-70 in Utah, where you're going downhill for 18 miles and it's relatively straight.
Yeah, I would do that.
Okay.
But it still puts it I'm about 1200 at, I think it was at 1200 at 72 or 73. So
That's in 12th
that's
gear.
13.
Oh, 13. Okay.
Double over.
Yeah, okay. All right. So look at your instant readout on fuel mileage when you're in 13th gear going down a long grade and there's hardly any boost, and let me know what that's showing.
I can't figure out how to get to my instant readout. It's the average.
Okay.
I don't know if I have an instant readout on this one.
All right.
So.
Okay. All right. Thanks for the call. Let's go to Pennsylvania. Let me hit the right button. Steve, welcome.
Good morning, guys.
What's on your mind today?
3 separate things today. First, a max mileage report. Real quick here, I tried it in my little Honda generator I use as an APU. It makes it run better. it's an inverter generator, so it idles down to, so it's barely running. And then if you kicked in a lot of power and it would accelerate too quick, it would die, which is very inconvenient to get out of the truck and start it again. Now, since I've been using the max mileage, and it doesn't do that. So
Nice.
Makes it much more reliable.
Yeah, that's a big change.
So, and then you were talking about, Leroy was talking about lift gates and wiring, and I've got quite a bit of experience with that. I ran a lift gate for a long time. If somebody's trying to run a big cable all the way to the front of the trailer, it's not a good idea. I mean, you need the battery as close to the control unit as possible, unless you got a lift gate that all it does is go up and down. But if you got one with a computer in it, if you don't have at least 12 volts, it starts doing crazy things like you want it to tilt up, but it tilts down, and you got a like a $25,000 Snap-on toolbox you're delivering, and it starts tilting down, and it gets scary. So, and there's a company, the company that makes lithium-ion batteries that Joel's going to be testing at Battleborn Batteries. They're going to start, I don't know which of the liftgate companies are going to start using their batteries, so they can stay charged and you give you the proper voltage. And I was used to, if I was going to deliver a whole trailer, I would just hook a battery charger up to the battery just to make sure it stayed charged. Kind of a pain, but lithium-ion is just perfect for that.
Good. Nice.
And then electric axles on trucks. We talked about this before. I found a set of Helion axles, but I decided that it wouldn't do me any good. I've done a lot of work getting rid of rotating mass, to the point of getting rid of the fan hub, and I went 6x2, and I right now I'm at my 30-day, I think it's 11.2, and 27 cents a mile for fuel. So now if I put an axle in, it's got a differential. Both the Helion axles got differentials. So then I'm starting to add rotating mass that's rotating all the time. And how often, do you need to charge or use the electric to boost you? I think they're going to lose so much. And that's probably why their project just failed. So I need to find wheel end motors, so there's no differential, just the motors, and because then there's very little drag. So I need to find a Tesla that crashed that's in a junkyard somewhere. So keep your ears.
Steve, tell me again why you think the Helion program crashed.
Oh, well, first they tried to make it too much horsepower and all that, but they have differentials in the axle, so they got a motor on the axle. And if you look at Meritor, and they blew something or another, they got a motor mounted to a differential rather than having two separate motors. And there was a guy that was parting out. They were almost brand new Kenworth trucks. I got them from Kenworth, and they were electric. They had electric axles in them, and all the controls and everything were cut out. Just the motor, and I mean the cabs were almost brand new. And I contacted that guy. He wanted $25,000 a piece, and I said, well, no. Well, Kenworth paid $100,000 for. Well, that probably was with batteries and controllers, and all that rest of that stuff. But I think that project failed because, well, we got differentials, so what sense does that make? You have to have it in a truck with an engine and transmission because you gotta get that power to your wheels, and you need a differential for that. Well, now electric, why do that? Have a wheel end motors, and I'm pretty sure that's what Tesla's doing. So you got all that drag with the oil churn and differentials turning, and
that doesn't seem to make sense.
They hated it. No, and the company that it's up in Wisconsin, if somebody's interested, they can contact me if they want the contact information. But they were going to sell them for like $1,000 a piece, but they hated it. They had a couple of Helion trucks, and they were nothing but problems. They didn't get good fuel economy. They took the differentials out, all of the Helion stuff out, and put regular differentials in, and they sold them, as a regular truck. But yeah, he said it was a disaster. So.
Huh. All right.
And I think that's one of the reasons, So
there were millions and millions of dollars invested in that, and they started out at Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh, and we did their initial testing. And then they moved to Austin, Texas. And
certainly seems like there's potential in the idea.
Yeah. Well, see, I always wanted the small horsepower, so we don't need big motors. We just need a couple of small motors in the wheel ends, and somehow Tesla's doing it. I can't imagine it's that complicated.
Right.
And a friend of mine, he had the idea that he's got a lift axle, and so it'd been kind of hard to do that anyway with the electric axle because it's the forward lift axle, so you have to have room for the drive shaft through there. And he came up with why you could have wheel end motors on the steer axle. Now, how cool would that be? A lot of possibilities there. But I think if you only had a total of 100 horsepower, that's all you need to recoup some of that regenerative braking and give you just a little extra off the line. And
I think it's just a matter of coming up with the right design, and I'm not sure if anybody's really got that yet, but I still think there's some potential there. All right, I'm going to wrap things up early today. I got a lot going on. Bruce, remember, I think it was last week or the week before, I was talking about the fact that fuel out here in the gorge, we were up to like 55% biodiesel, I think, are my only options here in town.
My.
I know. And the Sprinter, that engine is only rated for 5% biofuel. I mean, that's it. They don't want you using any more than that. I put it in twice, which I really didn't want to do, and I've been looking for options. And last week we talked about adding the catalyst, and I am going to do that. And the Flashpoint, here's the interesting thing. We have 24,000 miles on this one. I've never even thought about the emission system. We talk about it on the trucks all the time. I know them inside and out. I know what to expect. Mm-hmm. I just wasn't even thinking about this. Does it regen? And is there an indicator if it's just a passive regen? Do I know if it's happening? When do I clean a DPF on something like this? So Lisa was actually scrolling through the menus the other day. Some kind of warning popped up and then disappeared, and she wasn't sure what it was. So she was scrolling through the menus, and she found a reading in there for the DPF. And at the time, this was like the day before yesterday, it was at 96%, but it doesn't tell you anything on that screen what that means. Do I have 96% left, or do I have 4% left? Or what is it measuring? I wasn't even sure. So I had to go look it up, and it turns out that number will go up until it gets to 100%, and then it will regen. But I'm still not clear if it's a passive or an active regen. But I did find, the good news is On the way over to the farm in the small town we have to go through there, their gas station has pure number 2 diesel, no biodiesel at all in it. So we do have a place to fuel now.
Fantastic.
Yeah, and I'm still going to use the catalyst and the flashpoint.
So you're
but
saved.
I'm wondering now that that reading is at 98%. So I may go do a little more digging and see what to expect when it hits 100. Is it going to do an active regen or a parked regen then? I have no idea.
Yeah.
But I'm also thinking
daily we get
that
we get people calling about using the flashpoint with the catalyst, and the results have been phenomenal.
Yeah.
So
well, I don't
become a great product.
I don't think it's a coincidence that I ran 2 tankfuls of this B55 through there, and now my DPF is just about clogged. Yeah, I got to stay away from that stuff. All right. Anybody have anything they want to close
I think
with?
maybe the government's getting their hands into things they shouldn't be.
Yeah, you're not kidding. And the fuel. Why are we putting out fuel that so many engines on the market can't use?
Exactly. Did you see the video of the one senator that was talking about the fleets that he knew that wanted to put in chargers for electric trucks in the towns that they were in? Said, absolutely not. We don't have enough power now. You cannot go to electric trucks. And he was asking the other politicians, whether it was in the Senate or the House, why do we keep forcing this on the trucking industry when there's not enough electricity? Nobody had an answer.
Bruce, the number I heard, I was at a conference and somebody from Schneider was there, and they were talking about a terminal they wanted to build in New Jersey. And I can't remember the name of the town, but it was at least big enough that you would recognize it. Wasn't a big city, but it was a big enough town that you would recognize. You know, I recognize the name. I know where it is in New Jersey. So it's not tiny. It medium size at best, maybe even medium to small. But Schneider in their terminal wanted to put in 10 truck chargers. 10. And the city said those 10 chargers, if they were all operating, would take more power than we currently produce. Not extra. If everybody in the town turned everything off and all the power went to that terminal, they'd be able to run the 10 chargers. That's how much power they're going to take. And they couldn't put them in.
It's incredible.
Yeah,
all these millions and billions of dollars that have been spent on this project, and yet we don't have the electricity to fund it.
No, and I think I told you, we talked about the numbers for the hydrogen over electric. The current cost to operate that truck is over $5 per mile in energy cost only.
Wow.
$5 a mile. I just had a caller yesterday, and this is common. He had done a really good job on his fuel mileage. He buys his fuel smart. His cost of energy in his diesel truck is 36 cents a mile.
Yeah.
Instead of $5 a mile.
So before people get these wild ideas, they need to make sure the natural resource is there to fund it.
Well, and here's the other crazy thing about this. I mean, we have trucks today. If you have, 200-gallon capacity and you're getting 10 miles to the gallon, and we can say that because we're now breaking 11 and 10 is certainly achievable. If you had 200 usable gallons, you've got a 2,000-mile range. The hydrogen electric has a 400-mile range before you have to get more hydrogen.
Right.
400 miles.
And,
That's
as we talk about
insane.
this, I don't want people to think that we're against it. I just think that you need to make sure you have the infrastructure for it.
I am not against this
something
kind of
else
stuff
you
at
have
all.
to something you have to keep in mind. Most of these politicians have a degree in law.
Yeah.
They were never wrench turners. They didn't work in the field like we did. They came out of of high school, went to college, went to law school, and somehow became politicians. And they don't really have hands-on type of backgrounds.
No,
And they're making all these rules.
Well, and what's worse is it's not even the politicians that we get to elect. All of these rules are made by alphabet agencies that we don't get to elect. They're appointed. The EPA makes these rules, not Congress. We shouldn't allow that. These kind of laws that affect us this much should only be made or at least approved by people we get to vote for. We don't have any say in this. They're just appointing these agencies, and it's the agencies that come in and write all these screwy rules and laws and regulations. And, here's the thing. I am all for saving the environment. I love the environment. But you have to, first off, convince me that all these new technologies are somehow better for the environment, and I don't see it. All the metals we have to mine for these batteries, disposing of the batteries after the fact, I don't know how. All the transporting of stuff all over the place to make all this happen. I don't see how this is any better for the environment than just sticking with diesel. Hydrogen, I have no idea what that's doing, but the cost is through the roof. So I don't get it. I mean, we should.
Have you read where people are buying these used Hyundai cars that are battery operated, and the battery is about done, and then they get a bill after they spent $6,000 or $8,000 or $10,000 to buy the car, and now it's $17,000 to replace the battery. Have you read any of those stories?
I have, and I've also said, as much as I love all my battery-powered tools and lawn equipment, I really do. They're convenient. The fact that I can carry a big impact wrench around with me and not need air, and I love them. But I am disappointed with battery life. These batteries do not last as long as they told us they were going to.
They do not, and do not leave them plugged in overnight out of sight, because a friend of mine, I told you this a couple weeks ago, his building burnt, and it was an 18-volt battery that was on charger, and he lost 7 vehicles inside the building, plus all his files and everything. So I drive by that every day, and I think about that.
Bruce, I hate to admit it, but
when you buy these battery tools and you are not using them, and they're sitting in your garage for a couple of years, you go to use them and the battery's shot. And then you go to buy an 18-volt battery, and what are they, $100 plus?
Well, here's...
And you say, well, gee, I hardly used it.
Yeah. Here's another thing. I stuck mostly with Ego for my lawn equipment because they were early and they had a lot. So, the more batteries you get, every time you buy a tool, you get another battery. The batteries are all interchangeable. And with power tools, I kind of stuck with DeWalt. My early DeWalt power tools, they changed the battery design. And I can't buy those batteries anymore. So now I have tools that, now they make an adapter, and I bought one. The adapter sucks. I can't get it out of the tool half the time when I need to put it on a different tool. It's big and bulky, so it adds to the size and the weight of the tool. But if I didn't have the adapter, the tools are just worthless. I can't find that style of battery anywhere now. They changed the whole style of their battery.
Yeah.
So I like I said, I love them, but they are not lasting anywhere near as long as they told us these batteries were going to last.
When you buy an electric drill or something that plugs into the wall and runs on 110, and it'll run on 110 50 years from now.
Do they still make those?
But you do have to put up with the wire. Yeah, they do.
I'm not sure. I haven't seen one in so long. And like I said, it's...
Hey, we had an incident Saturday night. We had a theft happen at our place of business here in Saxonburg. A red Volvo pulled through here at 2 a.m. and loaded 2 of our benches that we have out there for owner-operators to sit on.
You're
and sold our benches and then drove off. And we have cameras. We see who's pulling in and out and what's going on in the parking lot. but we weren't able to get the license plate. But we're still working on it. Yeah.
And it's even
So
worse.
if anybody knows anyone that, what's that?
I was going to say it's even worse. It's somebody in the industry.
Yeah, somebody in the industry.
That's awful.
A red Volvo. If anybody hears anything, I'd love to know who it was. And he must have been pretty desperate to steal a couple benches.
What do you do with benches? What possible need could you have for a bench that you're willing to steal for it? It just seems, I don't get it. I do want to go back, Bruce, when you told us about the charging issue and the fires. I hate to admit it, but I had 3 chargers plugged in my garage here at this house with batteries on them. I actually have a couple chargers in the coach plugged in with batteries in them, and I had probably 6 or 7 more chargers over at the other property plugged in with batteries in. I unplugged all of them.
Well, that's good, because the fire marshal, as soon as they determined the fire on this building, he said exactly what it was, and they're seeing a lot of it.
You know what I find weird? I find weird as far as a rule. I kind of get it, but it still seems to me like we're taking much more risk than what we should. And I don't know how you're going to stop because these batteries are so common now. But if you fly, you are not allowed to put any of those lithium ion or lithium iron phosphate or any of these batteries for battery powered tools or battery packs or backup batteries. You are not allowed to put those in your checked bags, but you're allowed to carry them on.
So you can carry on the Walt 18-volt, the little suitcase that has all the tools in. That's what I have. It has the circular saw, the hacksaw, the drill, charger, and 2 batteries. I could carry that suitcase on the plane, but I can't check it.
Right. The only logic I can find behind that, obviously they are worried about those batteries catching on fire. That's why they don't want them. The only thing I can think is if it's in the passenger compartment, I guess you'll know earlier and you can put it out. And if it's in the storage compartment, it's just going to burn and catch everything on fire. So I kind of see the logic, but it seems like that's still quite a bit of a risk. I mean, do we really want to have to deal with a fire in an overhead compartment or under somebody's seat?
Yeah, right.
But
it's very interesting.
That's the rule. But I unplugged all mine. No more of that.
Yeah.
Plug them in, take them off when they're charged.
Okay, Kevin, that's good.
All right. All right, we're going to wrap this up.
I'll try to get pictures of this building as it.
Yeah.
All right, you take care.
All right, we will do it again next week. Thanks to the team from Pittsburgh Power, as always. We'll see you back here tomorrow for Destination Health. I will be talking to the author, Casey Means. She wrote the book, Good Energy. Pretty interesting stuff, so we'll have her on tomorrow for Destination Health. We'll see you then. Be safe, be profitable, be fit and healthy. Always do the hard work and master the journey.